Hello, and welcome to this Be Smart About Art show. I'm Susan J. Mumford, the host and founder of Be Smart About Art, here today with Dr. Chris King.
Hello.
AKA the hubby. So it was after hearing Chris over the last weeks and even months now that I decided to bring him onto the show to talk about getting rational news sources, getting information that is scientifically based. It's extremely valuable, and there are reasons for that. Now, before that, I just want to explain for those of you who are watching us on Facebook Live at the moment why we have a green screen behind us, and Chris, as a technologist, could explain that, why it doesn't actually have an image behind it.
Well, previously you have been using a Zoom and Facebook integration to you've been using a Facebook integration with Zoom to actually stream on Facebook, and what Zoom allows you to do is it allows you to replace your background, and particularly if you've got a green screen like this, you can get really quite a nice replacement to the background. But Zoom, as many of you may have seen, have been in a lot of trouble recently, and have got a lot of very bad press about poor security in their platform and things they've done that have been leaking information and all kinds of stuff. So as a consequence, Zoom are now working flat out to improve their security, and new settings and new security features are popping up all the time. I was having a Zoom call with some colleagues the other day, and one of them messaged me on Slack and said, "Let me in," and I didn't know what he meant. And it turned out that Zoom has now, for the free accounts, enforced enabling that you have to allow people in.
Oh, yes.
And I wasn't aware of it, so I suspect that the Facebook integration isn't working at the moment because of the changes that Zoom are making.
Yeah, so anybody else who's trying to record on Zoom in the current period and then stream to Facebook, you might find the same that I did, which was I basically got a big notification saying that I had it enabled, that setting, and I was going, I haven't changed anything. I'm still using this. This is what, our 11th or 12th session now, but here we are, and we are talking today after already being educated by Chris based on his understanding of technology. So when we talk about the current COVID-19 pandemic and news sources, that kind of thing, what brings you to your perspective, and why you're going to talk about the news sources that you are?
I mean, my perspective is, although my perspective partly comes from the fact that I have a PhD in biochemistry, so which I did a long time ago, but that gives me a kind of background to be able to understand some of the more technical information that one can find, and I've as time has gone on, I've been looking at various sources, and I would say that my go-to source now for daily updates on what is happening and interesting research and stuff is a man called Dr. John Campbell, who has a channel on YouTube, and he does one or two broadcast shows, whatever you want to call them, a day, where he talks about, so he does global news where he talks about what's happening in different countries, but he also will bring up any interesting research that's happened. So he it was this morning, he actually did a post about the latest statistics from an organisation called INCNARC, which is the Intensive Care Unit Audit and Research Council or something like that is looking at UK intensive care figures. He talked about a link to a study from, I think it might be Indonesia. I don't remember where it's from actually.
And he does talk about things from around the globe, so it's very interesting.
Talking about a study that's been done that shows how far droplets can travel when people cough and sneeze, and with sneezing it can be up to 8 meters.
How much is that in feet?
It's more than 20 feet.
Like 25 feet or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long way.
Yeah, maybe between 20 and 25 feet.
So he's very good, and he also provides the information that he's providing he provides links to it, he provides links to papers, so you can, if you want to, you can go and look at them and make your own decisions. He's the best source I've seen. I also find that other reputable organisations like The Atlantic, for example, which is the American magazine, tend to have very good articles.
In fact, they had what was in the first 3 weeks of this starting to become, well, something in the West. They wrote what was at the time my favourite article, very well researched, objective, considered, talking about what the long term could look like of COVID-19 as well.
Yeah.
And I'll add as well, in basically in response to what Chris has been talking about and will continue to do so for the show today, that this really ties into your business and what you're doing, what decisions you're making. A lot of the decision making behind me not going to New York in early March of this year for Army Week was because of the news that we were taking in, and we were realizing what was happening and basically doing a daily risk assessment. And
principally the thing that drove that decision of Susan not to travel was that at the time we were beginning to see cases appear. There were a small number of cases in Italy, and then we were beginning to see other people in the world pop up and be tested positive for COVID-19 who had been to Milan for a business meeting or who had been skiing in northern Italy. And we realised then at the time that what that meant was that there was a lot more virus, there were a lot more people infected in northern Italy than just the testing numbers indicated.
And you didn't know at the time, but one of your former colleagues had a business meeting, not Milan, but with some business people from Milan.
Yeah.
And he ended up struck down with what appears to be COVID-19 for 27 days.
Yeah, and the assessment at the time was less, for Susan not flying, was more along the lines of, because it was very much people being quarantined at the time, was that if she had gone to the Armory show in New York and had been in a big conference centre, a big art show with potentially 60,000 people there, and somebody, a couple of people turned out to have COVID-19, then she might have been quarantined in New York for 14 days, and then the way things were progressing, it might be that she would have to fly back to the UK if she could, and then would be quarantined for another 14 days. And so that was the thinking of that was the reason for that decision at the time, and that we've been proved to be right, because
the lecture I gave remotely, which was going to be in place on site in New York City at NYU, was actually, even though the 13 days before that lecture, when I gave notification that I could do it virtually but would not actually be in New York City, it seemed a big act or big action to have taken. But actually it turns out that lecture I did deliver from right here where I'm sitting right now, that was the evening before all of NYU's lectures went remote. So actually it was very timely. And so here we are today in almost mid-April, and the situation's continuing, so we need reliable news sources to help us give information. So we can't see the future. If we could, well, we'd be in a different situation with the lottery, perhaps. Dr. King, you like to joke about lottery numbers, I think. So if we can at least make some good assessment of what's happening and what's possibly going to come. You have so far mentioned Dr. John Campbell.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned the Atlantic.
Yeah.
What else?
Ars Technica, which is a technology website, has got ongoing articles on.
It's ARS Technica.
Yeah, Ars Technica.
Ars Technica.
That has, in amongst all the technology and science and other stuff, it has got some very good articles on COVID-19. It's done some interesting articles recently about mask wearing and what evidence there is for whether widespread mask wearing can make a difference or not, and so on and so forth. What's very important to remember with this is that it's also partly why the models keep changing, because this is a new virus. Doctors and epidemiologists and everyone else looking at this is dealing with a new virus that we haven't seen before, and there's a lot of evidence being collected all the time, and that evidence can lead to conclusions changing over time as well. So don't just assume that something you heard last week is necessarily current. You really need to keep up to date with the information that's coming in. In terms of kind of up to the minute news, The Guardian have got a series of rolling blogs where they report information from the UK. They've got one for the UK, they've got one for the US, and they've got one globally. If you want to keep up to date every minute, but I'm actually not convinced that's necessarily the best idea. I think at the moment the best thing you can do is, you know, keep current with what the recommendations are, but don't obsess about the news, because it'll just get you down, basically. The best thing to do is just, you know, be aware, stay at home. Recommendations are beginning to suggest now that if you're going to the supermarket, wear a mask.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that's an example of how it is changing. I mean, I will add to that when Chris and I have made changes to, say, what we're doing with businesses, in terms of our travels or how we're meeting people, that kind of thing, or even our planning, that quite often it's been just a quick change from one day to the next, but there's been a build-up, and that suddenly, because of some new information that's come out, then we go, right, now it's time to make that change. So I would say that we've been able to anticipate by maybe a week or something in most instances that, okay, it's likely going to, maybe 2 weeks even, that it's likely going to change, but we can't be sure. And just being objective about it.
Yeah.
You know, being rational and not knee-jerk reaction, not having a knee-jerk reaction with things, and there's no emotion in it. It's just...
And we started doing this kind of lockdown thing about a week before, just under a week before all of our local friends did, and it's fine. I mean, you know, I'm by profession a software developer, so I spend all day sitting in front of a computer, so I'm not really seeing a big difference. And in fact, we're finding that we've actually been in contact with more friends by FaceTime or Zoom or Skype or other things than we have before. So in a funny kind of way, it's actually brought us closer together with people, and I was not expecting that.
No, and it's slowed down life. I mean, needless to say, different people are experiencing different things, as we have been saying in the show, and we absolutely appreciate that reality. In terms of the art market, then, and you're seeing, okay, what's happening scientifically, what's happening on really good, reliable news base kind of sources. Another point to make too is thinking then about how you're basing some key changes with communication or selling strategies. I was just speaking with an artist earlier today who is the head of an artist collective gallery or a cooperative gallery, and in fact the recent sale that they have made was to somebody in the States. Now I think that that's largely cultural, that people in the UK have pulled back or probably not spending as much. People in America are still more willing to spend money. That's my take as somebody who's American, who's been based in the UK for about 20 years now. And so actually they don't normally facilitate sales to the States. They did make that happen, and they're considering actually opening up their business internationally right now instead of normally being only for the UK, because that's, oddly enough, even though they're not seeing people who are down the road and they've got equal contact, this is what I was following, what you were saying, they've got equal contact to people in other countries thousands of miles away. Well, actually, it might very well be people thousands of miles away more likely to engage right now. And the shipping companies are still open and still transporting art at this point in time, so it's quite interesting. You know, that could change. That may not stay. In terms of a final point when it comes to looking at good reliable sources and just considering how things change so quickly, what's the one kind of tip that you would leave everyone?
Don't believe everything people say on Facebook.
Right. And maybe we'd even extend that to online.
Yeah.
And in fact, early on, if you remember this, I looked on Twitter. This is when it was all taking place in China, and I saw a tweet, and I went, "Oh my gosh, this thing is happening!" And then I thought, wait, I need to check the source of this, and it turned out it was a very politically motivated individual.
So just don't jump at everything you see. See if you can find other sources of it. And
Snopes.com.
Snopes and other fact-checking websites, but also, as I said, people like John Campbell and Ars Technica and places like that are the best places to go.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And how can people find you online? Instagram, I believe.
Instagram, yes.
Yeah. And you are CE King Photography.
Yes.
I believe. So do check out Chris's work on Instagram. And we will add the links into the comments when we have the replay in the Facebook page as well. Everyone, thank you very much. And for those of you who are members of Be Smart About Art, we're going to go jump into the member masterclass right now. So we'll look forward to seeing you over there. And as ever, do check out the membership program at patreon.com/Be Smart About Art. We're building a big global community. We've brought all of our memberships together with a motto of keeping it simple and supportive. And he's going to show you what we're doing this evening.
At 8 o'clock, we are going to go outside our front door and bang this saucepan to show our support for the NHS.
Exactly, and this is the very reason we've changed the time of the Thursday show to 7 p.m. UK, 7 and 2 p.m. Eastern, to enable all of our UK listeners to jump out and give support to the NHS. Everyone, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you to Chris.
My pleasure.
I've been Susan J. Mumford, and see you soon online at the Be Smart About Art show and over at Patreon. Ciao for now, and signing out from Lewis in East Sussex in England.